Good morning, and welcome to the Universalist Church Online, in which love is the spirit. We are glad you are here, whether you're joining us from West Hartford, Connecticut, or anywhere in the world. I'm Jim, one of your representatives on the board. It is especially good to have you here together in this challenging time. Our preacher today is Ann Kadlecek, a seminarian at Yale Divinity School and intern minister at All Souls New Haven. We have Zoom fellowship times for our community throughout the week, as well as before and after worship on Sunday. You can find out more information about those gatherings by getting onto our mailing list through the contact page on our website. Please do read our electronic communications. That's our best way of staying connected with you. Today we'll have our Zoom fellowship time at about 10:45 after worship ends. If you're attending through Zoom today, please do stay online, even if you need to step away for a short break to join in conversations with one another. We know that online worship is a bit different from being in the sanctuary. The order of service will appear in the chat box or the YouTube description. Please take a moment to wave hello to one another and to those watching our live stream. Can I get a virtual high five? And now, please take a moment to turn off your email and other apps. Put the keyboard away and settle in for worship.
Good morning. I'm Ann Kadlecek. Welcome to my living room, and thank you so much for inviting me into your space to worship with you this morning. I'm grateful to be here with you today. This is a difficult day. It's a difficult week, a difficult time in our lives and in the life of this nation. We've had so many reminders recently of the white supremacy of our culture and the pervasive anti-Blackness. And in that wider context, we just saw another night of protests and violence sparked by the killing of George Floyd and threats of more violence from our leadership. And we're still in a pandemic. What's going on right now is scary and it's heavy, and our physical distancing just makes it that much harder to hold. It is good in this moment to gather as we can, to join in community, to be here for one another, to reconnect with the spirit of life. I'm glad you're here. It is good this morning to be together. We will begin by lighting a chalice with these words from Jean M. Olsen. In what form did the Spirit appear to you today? The blossom of a flower, the tug of a child's hand, the silent twinkling stars, an old woman smiling at the bus stop, a gentle hug, a presence so close to your soul you could almost touch it, words of truth formed unbidden in your mind. The holy disguised in so many ways. May your senses open wide in recognition. Please join me in speaking the words of our affirmation, our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So I want to share with you now something wonderful and amazing that happened for me today. I made toast. Now, as you think about my toast, that might not seem wonderful and amazing, but come with me. Someone planted wheat seeds, and the soil fed those seeds, and the sun gave them energy, and the clouds gave them water, and those wheat seeds grew. Someone harvested that wheat. Someone else made flour. Someone made bread, and because that someone wasn't me, other people packaged it and took it to the grocery store and put it on the shelf where I found it, and I took it home. And I made toast. Wonderful toast. Now, I'm not saying that everything that has happened today so far was wonderful. Some of what's going on in the world is definitely not wonderful. Some of your morning was probably not wonderful. But still, I invite you to notice wherever you are, whatever else is happening in your life, what is wonderful and amazing. There's a book by Cynthia Ryland called The Wonderful Happens. It's a children's book, and if it hasn't come your way, I recommend it. It's a poetic exploration of some of the ways in which the wonderful happens every day, often without our noticing. Things like bread, peaches, clocks, earthworms. And you. You are wonderful. Unlikely, improbable. The chances of your being here statistically are mind-bogglingly low, and yet, here you are. The wonderful happened. You. The holy appears in our lives in so many ways. May our hearts open wide in recognition.
Together in spirit, though we are apart, we gather as always in mind and in heart. We gather in spirit to share with our friends and celebrate connections on which life depends. So we smile and we wave from near and from far. We don't know how long we'll be where we are, but when we get together, what joy we'll all share. I can't wait until we are there. Together inseparate, we're finding new ways to nourish connections throughout the long days. We yearn for the loved ones we're now parted from, but we know that the day of reunion will come. So we smile and we wave from near and from far. We don't know how long we'll be where we are, but when we get together, what joy we'll all share. I can't wait until we are there. But when we get together, what joy we'll all share. I can't wait until we are there. I can't wait until we are there.
Good morning, everybody. I had not planned to be with you this morning. I'm actually going to be attending an ordination by Zoom at 10:30. But given this past week and where we are and what's happening, I couldn't imagine not being here with you, at least briefly. And I cannot tell you how much I wish that we were together in body as well as in spirit. There's a quote from one of the greatest musicians to come out of Minneapolis, Prince. He said at the beginning of one of his songs, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life." And I am feeling that. It pains me to see what is happening in this world, for many, many reasons, and I know that I am not alone in that. It pains me because we didn't get this right at every other opportunity that we have had as a nation. It pains me because the struggles and the sorrows and the harms and the deaths of the past were not enough for us to make these corrections, to see that Black Lives Matter, to actually create equality and equity and safety and a fullness of life for each and every person who is a part of this country. I am grieving and sorrowing because I watch the video of people simply saying, I'm tired of being scared. And when we protest, we're trying to be peaceful, and there are people coming in and doing things that we don't want them to do. We've seen video of white people taking advantage of Black protest to create havoc. This isn't a simple time or a simple situation. And I don't know about you, but I am afraid. I am afraid for our country. I am afraid for my friends and loved ones. I am afraid that we won't get this right. I am afraid that people will take the wrong lessons from this, and that the police will become even more adversarial and more brutal. And that Black people and people of color of all kinds, queer people, women, will all end up becoming a target, far more so than they have been now. That is what I fear. I also know that in times like this, birthing something new is always scary, and it's always hard. Change is not easy. It is not comfortable. And it requires all of us to come together to choose which way it will move forward. So in the Facebook post that I wrote, I asked you to pay attention, to speak out, call, write your representatives and the papers, join online protests, and if you feel that it is your absolute necessity, safely, without spreading COVID-19, consider in-person protests. Remembering that COVID-19 does actually harm, especially Black people, more than white people for whatever reason in this country, systemic racism, all these things. We must find at every level a way to make clear that we want a different future, that our faith compels us to seek a different future. Our Universalist history, our Unitarian Universalist present, our belief that each and every and all should be included in the wholeness and beauty of the world without exception. We have a responsibility to help make that happen. And so I ask you, be uncomfortable, be willing to be uncomfortable. Know that there is holiness in that discomfort and that it offers us an opportunity. We can do better. We can make better choices. We can help guide this nation into a better way of being. We can help lift up the lives and the communities of each and every person in this country, especially the African American and Black communities that need our support and help, if we put our minds and our voices and our actions to doing it. In our fear, let us not despair, but rather move forward. Thank you for being here this morning. I know that Ann's message will amplify all the good possibility that we have going forward, and I want that for us and for everyone. Please listen carefully, pay attention, and speak out. Blessings, and thank you.
As we are gathered this day and reflect in sadness and in collective love on this past week. We call forth the holy in each one of us. Our very being, our shared humanity is holy. We walk on sacred ground. We share the very breath of life, and it, especially at this pandemic time, is so very precious and holy. As we join in prayer this morning, we call to the holy within each one of us and the holy that surrounds us day in and day night to support our collective prayers. From within our community, Cynthia has requested we provide her with prayers for comfort and healing as she begins a new week. Joyce continues to ask for prayerful support for Judy, to hold her and her family as she moves closer toward her transition. In our larger community, we ask that our honoring of our commitment as a congregation to Black Lives Matter touch our hearts deeply and lend our support, care, and compassion to the actions Adam spoke about that speak to that commitment. Finally, as reopening of businesses and places around us within our countries and communities begin to phase in, may we provide patience, kindness, and ongoing compassion to one another. Let someone go in front of you in the grocery store line. Acknowledge the person who picks up your garbage in the mornings. Be aware and awake. May we genuinely offer love as the Spirit to all with whom we begin the reopening processes. Please now join me in moments in which we allow the holy to be present to these needs and those that are unspoken within each of our hearts. May our day be filled with awareness of all the holy wonders that call to each one of us and speak to the spirit of love that abides within this community. May it be so.
And now a moment of gratitude for all the ways in which you support this congregation and one another. Offering assistance to someone who needs it, just being there virtually and keeping this church functioning in this hard time. And financially. Finances these days are a challenge for many, and this congregation is grateful for whatever support makes sense for you in this moment. Half of what you give this morning that isn't part of a pledge goes to support the work of this church. The other half is shared with Hawkwing, a nonprofit that works with the Cheyenne River Lakota to alleviate poverty, improve housing, strengthen education, and support health services on the reservation in South Dakota. You can find the links for donating to support this congregation and Hawkwing in the chat box and on the church website. And thank you for all that you do to support this church. Please join now in singing our doxology.
Our reading this Sunday is The Wild Strawberry. This story is from the Zen Buddhist tradition, retold by Elisa Davy Permain. It is a koan, an educational story with multiple messages, and where you and I might hear different things at different times. As you listen to this story, I invite you to consider a question that might be familiar from children's faith formation. Where are you in this story? The Buddha told this parable. A man traveling through the mountains suddenly found himself being chased by a huge, hungry tiger. He ran and ran until he came to the edge of a cliff. There, with nowhere else to go, he caught hold of a thick vine and swung himself over the edge. Above him, the tiger growled. Below him, he heard a sound and looked down to see another tiger waiting for him at the bottom of the vine. That was when two mice scrambled out from the cliffside and began to gnaw at the vine. The traveler could see that they were quickly eating through it. Then, in front of him, in the face of the cliff, a delicious smell caught his attention. A luscious wild strawberry. Holding onto the vine with one hand, he reached and picked the berry with the other. It was delicious.
Where are you in this story? I've seen myself in this koan in different ways over the years. I think that's why I love it. Now, when I first heard it, not so much. What I heard then was an invitation to ignore the problems of the world, to do what feels good and leave the tigers for someone else. I am an oldest child, and where I saw myself in that story was as the person who would end up dealing with the tigers while the traveler who got into this mess had a nice snack. That strawberry looked like irresponsibility or passivity or entitlement. This oldest child wasn't having it. But over the years, I've seen myself in that story in some different ways at different times. The experience of being overwhelmed by fear and hanging on by a thread. A moment of despair when I could see no way out. A realization that I don't always have as much agency as I like to think. A time when I was the one who pursued a sweet distraction instead of facing reality. Or a moment of unexpected joy, even though things around me were falling apart. A sudden appreciation of the surprising grace of the present moment. In recent weeks, maybe all of those. Where are you in the story? For me, right now, it is a story of this moment, of what has happened and what could happen. It might even be a story of hope. Because I am that traveler. We are that traveler. Before this pandemic, we were running. Driven by consumerism and our culture to work ever more so we can consume ever more. Driven by wealth inequality and oppression that forced more and more of us to work longer and harder just to get by. We were running from the hard work of dismantling white supremacy. The tiger of environmental catastrophe was at our heels, joined perhaps by our own individual tigers, our fears, addictions. I was running. We were running. Racing toward a future that we imagined pretty much like the past, caught up in a worldview that said if we just kept going faster and faster, all would be well, or at least it would be scary in familiar ways. And then everything changed. We went off that cliff and suddenly we weren't running anymore. In fact, we were holding very still in a difficult, dangerous place. Individual experiences of this pandemic vary a lot, but collectively, we've been getting an up-close view of some of our tigers as we notice who can stay home and who can't. Who is mildly inconvenienced and who is terrified, grieving, despairing, or hungry. Who can use the criminal justice system as a weapon and who is routinely harmed by that system. We know these inequities. Some have known them firsthand for a very long time, but we haven't looked at them together in quite this way before. This moment of holding still is placing our familiar tigers of oppression and injustice right in front of us, very close, where it's a little harder to look away. We're also noticing some mice, issues that weren't on our collective radar before, but they sure are now. The preciousness of toilet paper, certainly, but also the very real danger of infectious disease. The true cost of leadership that isn't interested in governing a democracy. And the way our well-being is unalterably linked to that of the most vulnerable. Everything changed. And here we are, still hanging from a fraying vine. And there's that strawberry. Now, the expression, every cloud has a silver lining, does not resonate with me. I don't believe everything happens for a reason or for the best. With apologies to the great 14th century Christian mystic Julian of Norwich, I'm not at all sure that all shall be well. Perhaps for you, one or more of those understandings is helpful. It just doesn't work that way for me. But I do believe that even in hard times, the bad stuff is not the whole story. For me in this moment, that strawberry is a call to attend to all of what is. Not denying or minimizing any of it. Those tigers are real. And so are the blessings. Spring, a warm smile, a rest, the products of our stress baking. You. The wonderful continues to happen. And there is hope in our capacity to relish the beautiful, the amazing, right in the middle of the difficult. Not hope in the sense of fixing things, but in the words of Zen teacher Diane Rossetto, the deep hope of a life of presence to what is, a life of authenticity. Part of that deep hope, and one of the wonderful things in this moment, is the unexpected possibilities emerging as life is upended. Along with the fear and worry and anger and grief, there is a sweet, fresh opportunity to not resume our running, to not go back to the society or the people that we were before, to not go back to what we came to believe was normal. In the past weeks, at least in some quarters, I have been hearing an expanded awareness that everyone's well-being is connected, and a wider understanding of healthcare as a right. More people seem to be deeply troubled by the 400-year-old racism that still destroys lives and our vision of a country that is free and just. I've been hearing more often lately that we might be happier with a little less doing and acquiring, and a little more concern for those on the margins and the underpaid people on whom so many lives depend. Some have even noticed that the air is cleaner, wildlife returning, the very earth is quieter. Perhaps you've been perceiving things in your life differently too, coming to your own realizations about what matters, what you really want and need, and how you want to be in this world. This pause on a fraying vine and this heightened awareness gives us a chance to redirect ourselves individually and collectively toward a different future, one that is more nourishing and life-giving for all of us. Perhaps a future in which success is measured not by gross domestic product and same-day shipping, but by health care for all, fair wages for the truly essential work, a commitment to living together, the dismantling of systems of oppression, and slowing down and letting ourselves and the planet breathe. For these are all connected. All require the end of the white supremacy culture that has been with us for so long. It's become the only way we know. This could be, in the words of environmental activist Joanna Macy, our great turning. Away from a destructive and unsustainable way of life toward a civilization that is rooted in the inherent worth of all, our glorious interdependence, and an all-embracing love. As Unitarian Universalists, a new opportunity to live into such a vision is a wonderful thing. So how does the story end? Do we fall further down the cliff? Do we claw our way back up only to resume running ever faster? We hear the call and we feel the urge to forget what we've seen and learned and to just end the violence and return to normal, meaning the way things were before. All around us, we see people eagerly resuming pre-pandemic behaviors, heedless of the risk to themselves and others in the name of normalcy. Resisting that call to return to what was won't be easy. But in this moment, the holy appears as possibility, newly emerged when everything changed, that we might emerge from this tragedy with a new way of traveling. We might not return to normal. And that might be something to celebrate. How does the story end? We don't know. We're still clinging to the vine, seeking moments of joy amid the mess. But we won't be here forever. The future will be different. And out of this upheaval and loss, we can live that future with greater care for one another and the earth. As Reverend Adams said, birthing something new is always hard. My prayer is that we never return to normal if that means all the ways we were before. My prayer is that we seize this opportunity to become more like the people and the nation we aspire to be. Wherever each of us is in this story right now, may we be present to all that is and all that is possible. And because apparently I can't get enough of this metaphor, in this hard time, may we grasp those sweet strawberries of holy possibility and deep hope in a more just and faithful world to come. May it be so. Amen. I invite you into a brief moment of silence. As we extinguish our chalice, may we hold on to all the ways in which the holy appears today. As in this hard night is born hope, hope that we will not return to normal, hope in the tomorrow of which we dream. Let us speak together the pandemic version of our Unison benediction. Stay home and engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Go in peace. Amen.
Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? They are in the valley praying. Day is breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? They are gone to heaven, shouting. Day is breaking in my soul. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, everyone else, for being here this morning. It was good to be with you.